Okay, so let's talk about what on the fold means. Um, so basically, what it means is you fold your fabric like this, right? Because every time you put a pattern piece on fabric, you are on the wrong side of the fabric. That is what it's called. So this is the wrong side of my fabric. This is the right side. So you usually, for most fabrics, you'll be able to tell. If you can't tell because it's just like plain white cotton, just pick your favorite side. It's like not a big deal. So on the fold means for this pattern piece, you would, obviously get your fabric, you cover it. But you would fold the fabric enough to where it would, go all the way back. But this is just a sample piece of fabric, so it doesn't go all the way. So you would fold your fabric, you take your piece, right? Because this is the side that you do it on the fold. And you line it up all the way to the edge, right? And that is where you put your pattern piece. What happens is you get, when you cut it out and everything, you are going to have a piece that is double this, right? So this is supposed to be the back of a pajamas. So you would just have a mirror image of this, but it's all one piece of fabric. So this is how it's traditionally done. You line that up just like that. You would secure it somehow, draw around it, do whatever, cut it out, unfold it, and you have this huge piece of fabric. That is not how I learned how to do on the fold. I'm not sure why, but I really believe it's because it is a more accurate way. So I was not taught to fold the fabric back. I was taught you start just like this, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. Let me get a pen. So you secure your piece like this, no folding, just flat fabric, right? So there's no double layers, single layer fabric. You draw all the way around except for this edge. So you would draw all the way around until you got to here. Again, I'm just doing a sample piece, so envision all this. And then what you do is you make a line here and you make a line down here. And then you flip your pattern piece over and you line it up. You line it up there and you match the line down here. You secure it and you draw it again. I think the reason why I learned how to do it this way is because this is a really, really good way. I think it's more accurate, right? Personally, because you also don't have this, you don't have the extra bulge here. It's also a great way to, like, I think it's like you can match your stripes and things. I don't know. But that's how I learned. That's how I do it. It's just ingrained in me at this point. So that is one way you can do it. Most everyone you see online are going to tell you to put your fold line, your on the fold line, under 2 layers of fabric, over 2 layers of fabric. Line it up, secure it, draw it as one piece. So you're only doing half of it, cutting that out. And then you have your on the fold piece. I've never done it that way. So anyways, so the next thing I want to talk about is, what does it mean to cut to? What does that mean? Cut to. So the concept is, so this is the sole of a foot. It is great practice to always start, if any piece, if it is a cut to, you cut one on the front, like front side facing up. You cut the second one face side down. And just like go ahead and get in the practice of doing that for everything, even if it doesn't matter. Like on the sole of a foot, it doesn't really matter. But it would matter for mirror images of a top. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So this piece is a cut to. Okay? This is a cut to. And so what happens is this is your neckline, this is your shoulder, this is your armhole. Yeah? And so if I'm trying to make a left and a right side, I have to flip it. You have to do the mirror image. Otherwise, you're going to have one side cut like this, and it's going to have your beautiful fashion fabric on the front. And if you cut this again, it's not going to fit, because that piece suddenly, however it fits on, it's just going to be the back side of the fabric. So every time you see a cut 2 or a cut 4, you would cut, like a cut 4 would be two on this side, and then you would cut 2 on the back side. It's really, really important. And so it's just always get in the habit of, if you see a cut 2, to flip it. Because you're gonna get screwed if you don't. So let's kind of talk a little bit about how in the world do you do this? How do you put a pattern piece on fabric, cut it out, so you're ready to sew? Super easy. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. I'll show you my preferred method, but I'm also going to show you a couple of other ones. So some people pin the pattern piece to the fabric. They draw all the way around it, right? And they mark all of their things, whatever, and cut it out and then unpin it. I mean, do what you want. That's fine. The way I do it is, so I'm sure you remember, first off, you got to make sure your fabric is flat. Okay, iron your fabric. You put it out to, you're gonna put your pattern piece on here. Iron it. You want it flat. You want it wrinkle free. Okay, so I put my pattern piece here. As you know, my table is cork, so I can actually pin straight into my table. You probably don't have that, so I would just get any type of like hard object, right? Just a weight, something to hold it still. What I do, and that's it, right? And then you take your pin, you follow around, go around. And then I will take my weights off, and then I'll mark. So this in particular has a hole. What I do is I just take the pen, I poke it through the paper, and then I can just like draw a circle where I need it to be, right? So there's my circle. That's personally how I do it. Now for the notches, like these guys, look, I'll just flip it up, put them in a scale like that. Right, there it is. There is no need to cut this out, because these are reference points. That's all these things are to you. It's just reference points. So no need to like take the extra time to do that. Where's my piece? So commercial patterns, as I've told you before, all include seam allowance. So there's no reason to draw extra seam allowance unless that's something you want to do. Sometimes, especially for a lot of these baby clothes, as I'm sizing them up, I will add seam allowance and then use the line as a sewing line. It's a whole other thing, but you don't need to worry about that. So you will draw the line, you will cut on the line, and then you will use your line on the sewing machines to know where to sew. Like, remember I mentioned like 1/4 of an inch here, 5/8 of an inch standard. So anyway, so you cut it out and then you'll start following the directions. So let's talk about pinning. Let's go over to the sewing machine and I will show you what I am talking about. Okay, so pinning. You always have to think about the direction of your pin, okay? You want the bulk of your fabric to be over here, right? Like, you don't want to accidentally pin to where you have a blanket trying to fit through right here. You want the smallest amount of fabric on this side of your machine as possible. So if you are going to pin this way, you want to make sure you can grab your pins as they come up through the machine. The way I have solved this problem is cross pinning. So I pin this way along seams. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a sec. That way I can, either way, if it's on the wrong side or whatever, I can just pull the pins out, even if I'm pulling this way. But also when you cross pin, you can sew over the pins. A lot of people tell you like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. They're dumb. The only thing that can go wrong is that you break a needle. If you don't care about breaking needles, like I don't, just cross pin. You can sew right over your pins, and then you don't have to worry about which way you're pinning, if you're pinning correctly, and all this other stuff. There are times that I do pin this way, but it's usually for very specific reasons. I almost always cross pin. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I am working on this project for baby, and I've got to sew this seam here. I put the pins in this way. Bah. Okay, so when I put this through the machine, as such, my pins are going this way, and I can sew right over them. It's no big deal. Also, see how what I'm talking about here. The least bulk of fabric is over on this side. The most bulk of fabric is on this side. And I can just sew over these pins, and it's like, seriously, not a big deal. Pinning is an art form in and of itself. So because I cross pin, I'll show you how I do it. I never go in straight like that. As I'm pinning, I go like this. I scoop it, right? I scoop. It's hard to do that one-handed. Going in at an angle, especially when you have super, super thick fabrics like this, going in at an angle helps the fabric stay put. So you're not bending and warping where the fabric is. And like the more you pin, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So that's pinning two pieces of fabric together. Again, you'll just be, so this you can see, okay, I'm sizing these up. So now I will stitch along this line. That's a whole another video for another day. I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Yeah, so like whenever you're going to like sew something, you just match the two ends together. You'll pin and sew. Super, super, super easy. I say that, but it is easy. So that is kind of laying out how to put your pieces on fabric, how to draw around them and cut. Yeah, I think that's it for this one.